My biological mother had to make a very difficult decision, and that was to give me up because she had been in a pretty rough situation. From a really early age, my parents began to tell me that I was adopted, and they were so thankful that another woman had, given birth to me, but placed me in their arms. And so I just always thought it was so neat that God had a plan for me and that his plan was unfolding just the way that it was supposed to. I remember seeing these little commercials on TV talking about Chinese orphans and them, being eligible for adoption. And I remember thinking, I'm gonna do that one day. I'm gonna go ahead and adopt, and I wanna make a difference in the life of a child. And I remember being 12 and 13 and talking about it and telling kids, telling my friends, that one day I would adopt. And then, of course, when I met my husband, one of the first things we talked about was, I want to adopt. How do you feel about that? Because this is just something that's inside of me. I wanted to give back what was given to me. Some missionaries had come to our church and kind of shared a little bit about this orphanage in Mongolia that had, just these beautiful children that were basically being told that they would never be adopted because they were in a Christian orphanage. And something inside of me just kind of rose up, and I just felt like, you know what? God has a plan and a purpose for each child, for every child, no matter what orphanage they're dropped off at. And I felt a little fight on my hands. I felt like, that somebody needed to intervene and speak on behalf of these kids. And so we fought. We fought for our daughter for 2 years. 2 years later, we hopped back on a plane and we went back to Mongolia again, and we adopted Seth. And it was at that point in time that we made a promise to them that we wouldn't forget the children that we were leaving behind. And so out of our garage, we launched this little ministry, simply collecting like winter coats and hats and gloves and medicine. And I began going over there a couple times a year, just loving on the kids, sharing the love of Jesus with them. But the ministry began to grow bigger than what we were, bigger than our garage. And so I began to pray, okay, God, what's next? What do we do? How do we move forward? And so the answer was clearly made that we apply for a grant, through Orphan's Promise. My first meeting with Terry and Natalia was just amazing. We sat and we talked about the heart and the vision of Orphan's Promise. We talked about my desire to not forget the children that I left behind in Mongolia, that I lay awake at night and I'd see their faces and feel like God was calling me to do something more. Mongolia became an Orphan's Promise project, and here I am now sharing this heart and passion along with Terry, Natalia, the Orphan's Promise team, serving orphans and vulnerable children all around the world. And it's just amazing when I look back at the adoption process and when I look back at what God was orchestrating the whole time, and the plan that he had for my life it's amazing to see his hand in it. I wish everybody could go to work every day and feel good about the job that they're doing. It's not every day that you get to say, I work in my passion. I get to make a difference, and I get to do what I'm passionate about.